Hello everyone, today we're going to be reading Joshua chapter 17 to 24. This will be the last Joshua video, and then we'll be moving on to Judges. After Judges is Ruth, and after Ruth, Samuel. So, let's get on to it. This was the allotment for the tribe of Manasseh. As Joseph's firstborn, that is for Machir, Manasseh's firstborn. Machir was the ancestor of the Gileadites, who had received Gilead and Bashan because the Machirites were great soldiers. So this allotment was for the rest of the people of Manasseh, the clans of Abiezer, Helik, Azriel, Shechem, Hepher, and Shemitah. These are the other male descendants of Manasseh, son of Joseph, by their clans. Now Zelophehad, son of Hepher, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, had no sons but only daughters, whose name was Mahlah, Noah, Haglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They went to Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the leaders, and said, "The Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance among our relatives." So Joshua gave them an inheritance along with the brothers of their father, according to the Lord's command. Manasseh's share consisted of 10 tracts of land besides Gilead and Bashan east of the Jordan. Because the daughters of the tribe of Manasseh received an inheritance among the sons, the land of Gilead belonged to the rest of the descendants of Manasseh. The territory of Manasseh extended from Asher to Mikmethah, east of Shechem. The boundary ran southward from there to include the people living in Tappuah. Manasseh had the land of Tappuah, but Tappuah itself on the boundary of Manasseh belonged to the Ephraimites. Then the boundary continued to the Kana ravine. There were towns belonging to Ephraim lying among the towns of Manasseh, but the boundary of Manasseh was the northern side of the ravine and ended at the Mediterranean Sea. On the south, the land belonged to Ephraim. On the north to Manasseh, the territory of Manasseh reached the Mediterranean Sea and bordered Asher on the north and Issachar on the east. Within Issachar and Asher, Manasseh also had Beth-shan, Ibleam, and the people of Dor, Endor, Tanakh, and Megiddo. Together with their surrounding settlements, the third in the list is Naphtah. Yes, the Manassites were not able to occupy these towns, for the Canaanites were determined to live in that region. However, when the Israelites grew stronger, they subjected the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not drive them out completely. The people of Joseph said to Joshua, "Why have you given us only one allotment and one portion for an inheritance? We are a numerous people, and the Lord has blessed us abundantly." "If you are so numerous," Joshua answered, "and if the hill country of Ephraim is too small for you, go up into the forest and clear land for yourselves, there in the land of the Perizzites and Rephaites." The people of Joseph replied, "The hill country is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites who live in the plain have chariots filled with iron, both these in Beth-shan and its settlements and those in the valley of Jezreel." But Joshua said to the tribes of Joseph, "To Ephraim and Manasseh, you are numerous and very powerful. You will have not only one allotment, but the forest hill country as well. Clear it, and its farthest limits will be yours. Though the Canaanites have chariots fitted with iron, and though they are strong, you can drive them out." The whole assembly of the Israelites gathered at Shiloh, and set up the tent of meeting there. The country was brought under their control, but there were still 7 Israelite tribes who had not yet received their inheritance. So Joshua said to the Israelites, "How long will you wait before you begin to take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you? Appoint 3 men from each tribe. I will send them out to make a survey of the land and to write a description of it, according to the inheritance of each. Then they will return to me. You are to divide the land into 7 parts. Judah is to remain in its territory on the south, and the tribes of Joseph in their territory on the north. After you have written descriptions of the 7 parts of the land, bring them here to me, and I will cast lots for you in the presence of the Lord your God. The Levites, however, do not get a portion among you, because the priestly service of the Lord is their inheritance, and Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have already received their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan. Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave it to them." As the men started on their way to map out the land, Joshua instructed them, "Go and make a survey of the land, and write a description of it. Then return to me, and I will cast lots for you here at Shiloh, in the presence of the Lord." So the men left and went through the land. They wrote its descriptions on a scroll, town by town, in 7 parts, and returned to Joshua in the land at Shiloh. Joshua then cast lots for them in Shiloh in the presence of the Lord, and there he distributed the land to the Israelites according to their tribal divisions. The first lot came up for the tribe of Benjamin according to its clans. Their allotted territory lay between the tribes of Judah and Joseph. On the north side, their boundary began at the Jordan, passed the northern slope of Jericho, and headed west into the hill country, coming out at the wilderness of Beth Avin. From there it crossed to the south slope of Luz, that is Bethel, and went down to Ataroth Adar, on the hill country of Lower Beth Hadron. From the hill facing Beth Hadron on the south, the boundary turned south along the western side and came out at Kiriath Baal, that is Kiriath Jearim, a town of the people of Judah. This was the western side. The southern side began at the outskirts of Kiriath Jearim on the west, and the boundary came out at the spring of the waters of Nephtorah. The boundary went down to the foot of the hill facing the valley of Ben Hinnom, north of the valley of Rephaim. It continued down the Hinnom Valley along the southern slope of the Rephaim. It continued. Oh wait, I'm gonna reread that. It continued down the Hinnom Valley along the southern slope of the Jebusite city, so to En Rogel. It then curved north, went to En Shamesh, continued to Gilealoth, which faces the pass of Admimim, and ran down to the stone of Bohan, son of Reuben. It continued to the northern slope of Beth Arabah and on down into the Arabah. It then went to the northern slope of Beth Haglah and came out at the northern bay of the Dead Sea. At the mouth of the Jordan in the south, this was the southern boundary. The Jordan formed the boundary on the eastern side. These were the boundaries that marked out the inheritance of the clans of Benjamin on all sides. The tribe of Benjamin, according to its clans, had the following towns: Jericho, Beth Haglah, Emek Keziz, Beth Arabah, Zemaraim, Bethel, Avim, Parah, Ophrah, Kephah, Ammonai, Ophni, and Geba, 12 towns and their villages: Gibeon, Ramah, Beerath, Mizpah, Kithra, Mozah, Rakim, Irpeel, Taralah, Zelah, Haleph, the Jebusite city, that is Jerusalem, Gibeah, and Kiriath, 14 towns and their villages. This was the inheritance of Benjamin for its clans. The second lot came out for the tribe of Simeon according to its clans. Their inheritance lay within the territory of Judah. It included Beersheba or Sheba, Moladah, Hazar Shual, Bala, Ezim, Otolad, Bethul, Ormah, Ziklag, Beth Makaboth, Hazar Susa, Beth-Lebaoth, and Shahuim, 13 towns and their villages. Ain, Rimmon, Ether, and Ashan, 4 towns and their villages, and all the villages around these towns as far as Balath, Beer, Ramah, and the Negev. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the Simeonites according to its clans. The inheritance of the Simeonites was taken from the share of Judah, because Judah's portion was more than they needed. So the Simeonites received their inheritance within the territory of Judah. The third lot came up for Zebulun according to its clans. The boundary of their inheritance went as far as Sarid. Going west, it ran to Maralah, touched Dabasheth, and extended to the ravine near Jokneam. It turned east from Sarid toward the sunrise to the territory of Kisloth Tabor and went on to Dabarath and up to Japhia. Then it continued eastward to Gath-Hefer and Eth-Kazin. It came out at Rimmon and turned toward Ner. There the boundary went around on the north to Hanathon and ended at the valley of Ephtat-Il. Included were Tatah, Nahalau, Shimron, Idalah, and Bethlehem. There were 12 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inhabitants of Zebulun according to its clans. The fourth lot came out for Issachar according to its clans. Their territory included Jezreel, Kusalath, Shanim, Hapharim, Cheyenne, Anaharath, Rabith, Kishion, Ebez, Remeth, En-Ganim, En-Hadar, and Beth Paziz. The boundary touched Tabor, Shahazuma, and Beth Jamis, and ended at the Jordan. There were 16 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inhabitants of the tribe of Issachar according to its clans. The fifth lot came out for the tribe of Asher according to its clans. Their territory included Helkath, Halib, Beten, Akshaph, Alar, Malek, Imad, and Mishal on the west side. Their boundary touched Carmel and Shihor, Libnath. It then turned east towards Beth Dagon, touched Zebulun and the valley of Ephtat-El. It went north to Beth Emek and Neo, passing Kabul on the left. It went to Abdon, Rehob, Haman, and Cana as far as Greater Sidon. The boundary then turned back towards Ramah and went to the fortified city of Tyre, turned towards Hosar, and came out at the Mediterranean Sea in the region of Agsib, Umma, Afek, and Reha. There were 22 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Asher according to its clans. The sixth lot came out for Naphtali according to its clans. Their boundary went from Haleth and the large tree and Zananim, passing Adamai, Nekib, and Jabneel to Lakum and ending at the Jordan. The boundary ran west through Aznath, Tabor, and came out at Hukok. It touched Zebulun on the south, Asher on the west, and the Jordan on the east. The fortified towns were Zedin, Zer, Hamath, Rakah, Kinnereth, Adamah, Ramah, Hazor, Kadesh, Edrei, and Hazor, Iron, Migdal, El, Horem, Beth Anath, and Beth Shemesh. There were 19 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Naphtali, according to its clans. The seventh lot came out for the tribe of Dan, according to its clans. The territory of their inheritance included Zor, Eshtal, Shamish, Shalabim, Aljalon, Ithlah, Elon, Timnah, Ekron, Elakith, Gibeathon, Balath, Jehu, Bin Barak, Gath Rimmon, Mijakon, and Rakon, with the area facing Joppa. When the territory of the Danites was lost to them, they went up and attacked Leshem, took it, put it to the sword, and occupied it. They settled in Leshem and named it Dan after their ancestor. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Dan, according to its clans. When they had finished dividing the land into its allotted portions, the Israelites gave Joshua son of Nun an inheritance among them, as the Lord had commanded. They gave him the town he asked for, Timnath Serah, in the hill country of Ephraim, and he built up the town and settled there. These are the territories that Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the tribal clans of Israel signed by lot at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting, and so they finished dividing the land. Sorry, I had a cough for a moment. Chapter 20. Then the Lord said to Joshua, tell the Israelites to designate the cities of refuge, as I instructed you through Moses, so that anyone who kills a person accidentally and unintentionally may flee there and find protection from the avenger of blood. When they flee to one of these cities, they are to stand in the entrance of the city gate and state their case before the elders of that city. Then the elders are to admit the fugitive into their city and provide a place to live among them. If the avenger of blood comes in pursuit, the elders must not surrender the fugitive, because the fugitive killed their neighbor unintentionally and without malice aforethought. They are to stay in that city until they have stood trial before the assembly and until the death of the high priest who is serving at that time. Then they may go back to their own home in the town from which they fled. So they set about Kadesh in Galilee, in the hill country of Naphtali, Shechem, and the hill country of Ephraim, and Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the hill country of Judah. East of the Jordan, on the other side from Jericho, they designated Bezir in the wilderness on the plateau, in the tribe of Reuben, Ramoth and Gilead, in the tribe of Gad, and Golan and Bashan, in the tribe of Manasseh. Any of the Israelites or any foreigner residing among them who killed someone accidentally could flee to these designated cities and not be killed by the avenger of blood prior to standing trial before the assembly. Now the family heads of the Levites approached Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the other tribal families of Israel at Shiloh in Canaan, and said to them, the Lord commanded through Moses that you give us towns to live in, with pasture lands for our livestock. So as the Lord had commanded, the Israelites gave the Levites the following towns and pasture lands out of their own inheritance. The first lot came out for the Kohathites according to their clans. The Levites, who were descendants of Aaron the priest, were allotted 13 towns from the tribes of Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin. The rest of Kohath's descendants were allotted 10 towns from the clans of the tribes of Ephraim, Dan, and half of Manasseh. The descendants of Gershon were allotted 13 towns from the clan of the tribes of Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and the half-tribe of Manasseh and Bashan. The descendants of Merari, according to their clans, received 12 towns from the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Zebulun. So the Israelites allotted to the Levites these towns and their pasture lands, as the Lord had commanded Moses. From the tribes of Judah and Simeon, they allotted the following towns by name. These towns were assigned to the descendants of Aaron, who were from the Kohathite clans of the Levites, because the first lot fell to them. They gave them Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, with its surrounding pasture land, and hill country in Judah, Arba, was the forefather of Anak, but the fields and villages around the city they had given to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, as his possession. So the descendants of Aaron the priest, they gave Hebron, a city of refuge for one accused of murder, Libnah, Jatir, Eth Temoah, Halan, Debir, Ain Ruta, and Beth Shemesh, together with their pasture lands, 9 towns from these 2 tribes. And from the tribe of Benjamin, they gave them Gibeon, Gibeah, Anathoth, and Almon, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. The total number of towns for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, came to 13, together with their pasture lands. The rest of the Kohathite clans of the Levites were allotted towns from the tribe of Ephraim. In the hill country of Ephraim, they were given Shechem, a city of refuge for one accused of murder, and Gezer, Kibzaim, and Beth-horon, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. Also from the tribe of Dan, they received Altakir, Gibbethon, Ajalon, and Gath-Rimmon, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From half the tribe of Manasseh, they received Taanach and Gath-Rimmon, together with their pasture lands, 2 towns. All these 10 towns and their pasture lands were given to the rest of the Kohathite clans. The Levite clans of the Gershonites were given from the half-tribe of Manasseh, Golan, and Bashan, a city of refuge for one accused of murder, and Beer-Eshterah, together with their pasture lands, 2 towns. From the tribe of Issachar, Kishion, Daberath, Jarmuth, and En-Ganim, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From the tribe of Asher, Mishal, Abdon, Hilkath, and Rehob, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From the tribe of Naphtali, Kadesh and Galilee, a city of refuge for one accused of murder, Hamath-Dor and Kartan, together with their pasture lands, 3 towns. The total number of towns of the Gershonite clans came to 13, together with their pasture lands. The Merarite clans, the rest of the Levites were given of the tribe of Zebulun, Jokneam, Katah, Dimnah, and Nahalah, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From the tribe of Reuben, Azir, Jahaz, Kithmath, and Mithphath, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From the tribe of Gad, Ramath and Gilead, a city of refuge for one accused of murder, Mahanaim, Heshbon, and Jazir, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns in all. The total number of towns allotted to the Merarite clans, who were the rest of the Levites, came to 12. The towns of the Levites in the territory held by the Israelites were 48 in all, together with their pasture lands. Each of these towns had pasture lands surrounding it. This was true for all these towns. So the Lord gave Israel all the land he had sworn to their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there. The Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their ancestors. Not one of their enemies withstood them. The Lord gave all the enemies into their hands. Not one of all the Lord's good promises to Israel failed. Every one was fulfilled. I'll read that. Chapter 22. Then Joshua summoned the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and said to them, You have done all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded, and you have obeyed me in everything I commanded. For a long time now, to this very day, you have not deserted your fellow Israelites, but have carried out the mission the Lord your God gave you. Now that the Lord your God has given them rest as he promised, return to your homes, in the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. But be very careful to keep the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to keep his commands, to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. And Joshua blessed them and sent them away. And they went to their homes. To the half-tribe of Manasseh, Moses has given the land in Bashan, and to the other half of the tribe Joshua gave them on the west side of the Jordan, along with their fellow Israelites. When Joshua sent them home, he blessed them, saying, Return to your homes with your wealth, great wealth, with large herds of livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and a great quantity of clothing, and divide the plunder from your enemies with your fellow Israelites. So the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh left the Israelites at Shiloh and Canaan to return to Gilead, their own land which they had acquired in accordance with the command of the Lord through Moses. When they came to Gilgal, near the Jordan in the land of Canaan. The Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an opposing altar there by the Jordan, and when the Israelites heard that they had built the altar on the border of Canaan at Gilgal near the Jordan on the Israelite side, the whole assembly of Israel gathered at Shiloh to go to war against them. So the Israelites sent Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, to the land of Gilead, to Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh. Within him they sent 10 of the chief men, one from each of the tribes of Israel, each the head of a family division among the Israelite clans. When they went to Gilead, to Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, they said to them, "The whole assembly of the Lord says, how could you break faith with the God of Israel like this? How could you turn away from the Lord and build yourselves an altar in rebellion against them now? Was not the sin pure enough for us? Up to this very day we have not cleansed ourselves from that sin, even though a plague fell on the community of the Lord, and you are now turning away from the Lord. If you rebel against the Lord today, tomorrow he will be angry with the whole community of Israel. If the land you possess is defiled, come over to the Lord's land where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and share the land with us. But do not rebel against the Lord or against us by building an altar for yourselves, other than the altar of the Lord our God. When Achan, son of Zerah, was unfaithful in regard to the devoted things, did not wrath come on the whole community of Israel? He was not the only one who died for his sin." Then Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh replied to the heads of the clans of Israel, "The mighty one God, the Lord, the mighty one God, the Lord, he knows, and let Israel know. If this has been in rebellion or disobedience to the Lord, do not spare us this day. We have built our own altar to turn away from the Lord, and to offer burnt offerings and grain offerings, or to sacrifice fellowship offerings on it. May the Lord himself call us to account. No, we did it for fear that someday your descendants might say to us, what do you have to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? The Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you. You Reubenites and Gadites, you have no share in the Lord, so your descendants might cause ours to stop fearing the Lord. That is why we said, let us get ready and build an altar, but not for burnt offerings or sacrifices. On the contrary, it is to be a witness between us and you and the generations that follow, that we will worship the Lord at his sanctuary with our burnt offerings, sacrifices, and fellowship offerings. And in the future, your descendants will not be able to say to ours, you have no share in the Lord." And we said, if they ever say this to us or to our descendants, we will answer, look at the replica of the Lord's altar, which our ancestors built not for burnt offerings and sacrifices, but as a witness between us and you. Far be it from us to rebel against the Lord and turn away from him today by building an altar for burnt offerings, grain offerings, and sacrifices other than the altar of the Lord our God that stands before his tabernacle. When Phinehas the priest and the leaders of the community, the heads of the clans of Israelites, heard what Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh had to say, they were pleased. And Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, said to Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, today we know that the Lord is with us, because you have not been unfaithful to the Lord in this matter. Now you have rescued the Israelites from the Lord's hand. Then Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, and the leaders returned to Canaan from their meeting with the Reubenites and Gadites in Galilee, and reported to the Israelites. They were glad to hear the report and praised God, and they talked no more about going to war against them to devastate the country where the Reubenites and the Gadites had lived. And the Reubenites and the Gadites gave the altar this name, a witness between us that the Lord is God. After a long time had passed, and the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them, Joshua, by then a very old man, summoned all Israel, the elders, leaders, judges, and officials, and said to them, I am very old. You yourselves have seen everything the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. Remember how I have allotted as an inheritance for your tribes all the land of the nations that remain, the nations I conquered between the Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea and the rest. The Lord your God himself will push them out for your sake. He will drive them out before you, and you will take possession of the land, as the Lord your God promised you. Be very strong. Be careful to obey all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, without turning aside to the right or to the left. Do not associate with these nations that remain among you. Do not invoke the names of their gods or swear by them. You must not serve them or bow down to them, but you are to hold fast to the Lord your God, as you have until now. The Lord has driven out before you great and powerful nations. To this day no one has been able to withstand you. One of your routes, a stallion, between the Lord your God fights for you, just as he promised, so be very careful to love the Lord your God. But if you turn away and ally yourselves with the survivors of these nations that remain among you, and if you intermarry with them and associate with them, then you may be sure that the Lord your God will no longer drive out these nations before you. Instead, they will become snares and traps for you, whips on your back, and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from this good land which the Lord your God has given you. Now I am about to go the way of all the earth. You know with all your heart and soul that not one of all the good promises the Lord your God gave you has failed. Every promise has been fulfilled, not one has failed. But just as all the good things the Lord your God has promised you have come to you, so he will bring on you all the evil things he has threatened, till the Lord your God has destroyed you from this good land he has given you. If you violate the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you, and go and serve other gods and bow down to them, the Lord's anger will burn against you, and you will quickly perish from the good land he has given you. Then Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summoned the elders, leaders, judges, and officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. Joshua said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham, and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him throughout Canaan, and gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I assigned the hill country of Seir to Esau, but Jacob and his family went down to Egypt. Then I sent Moses and Aaron, and I afflicted the Egyptians by what I did there, and I brought you out. When I brought your people out of Egypt, you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued them with chariots and horsemen as far as the Red Sea. But they cried to the Lord for help, and he put darkness between you and the Egyptians. He brought the sea over them and covered them. You saw with your own eyes what I did to the Egyptians. Then you lived in the wilderness for a long time. I brought you to the land of the Amorites, who lived east of the Jordan. They fought against you, but I gave them into your hands. I destroyed them from before you, and you took possession of the land. And Balak, son of Zippor, the king of Moab, prepared to fight against Israel, he sent for Balaam, son of Beor, to put a curse on you. But I would not listen to Balaam, so he blessed you again and again, and I delivered you out of his hand. Then you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. The citizens of Jericho fought against you, as did also the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Hivites, and Jebusites. But I gave them into your hands. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove them out before you. Also the two Amorite kings. You did not do it with your own sword and bow. So I gave you a land on which you did not toil, and cities you did not build, and you live in them, and eat from vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." Then the people answered, "Far be it from us to forsake the Lord to serve other gods. It was the Lord our God himself who brought us and our parents up out of Egypt from that land of slavery, and performed those great signs before our very eyes. He protected us on our entire journey and among all the nations through which we traveled. And the Lord drove out before us all the nations, including the Amorites who lived in the land. We too will serve the Lord, because he is our God." Joshua said to the people, "You are not able to serve the Lord. He is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive you rebellion and your sins. If you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods, he will turn and bring disaster on you and make an end of you after he has been good to you." But the people said to Joshua, "No, we will serve the Lord." And Joshua said, You are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord." "Yes, we are witnesses," they replied. "Now then," said Joshua, "throw away the foreign gods that are among you, and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel." And the people said to Joshua, "We will serve the Lord our God and obey him." On that day Joshua made a covenant for the people, and there at Shechem he reaffirmed for them decrees and laws. And Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of God. Then he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak tree, the holy place of the Lord. "See," he said to all the people, "this stone will be a witness against us. It has heard all the words the Lord has said to us. It will be a witness against you if you are untrue to your God. Then Joshua dismissed the people, each with their own inheritance. After these things, Joshua son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. And they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath Serah in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaash. Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had experienced everything the Lord had done for Israel. And Joseph's bones, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, were buried at Shechem in the tract of land that Jacob bought for 100 pieces of silver from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. This became the inheritance of Joseph's descendants. And Eleazar, son of Aaron, died and was buried at Gibeah, which had been allotted to his son Phinehas in the hill country of Ephraim. So that's it. That's all of Joshua. We will be reading, we'll be going back through that, and we're going to be going through some notes now. Alright. Verse 3 through 4, chapter 17. Now Zelophehad, son of Hepher, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, had no sons but only daughters, whose names were Mahlah, Noah, Haglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They went to Eleazar the priest, Joshua, son of Nun, and the leaders, and said, The Lord commanded Moses to give us inheritance among our relatives, so Joshua gave them an inheritance along with the brothers of their father, according to the Lord's command. So, although women did not traditionally inherit property in Israel's society, Joshua carried out God's earlier instructions to Moses and gave these 5 daughters justice despite their tradition, letting them inherit the land their father deserved. In fact, God had told Moses to add a law that would help other families in similar circumstances pass along property fairly. Joshua was now carrying out this law. We can easily refuse to honor a reasonable request because we have never done it that way before. But like Moses and Joshua, we should look carefully at the intent of the law and the merits of each case before deciding. Verse 14 to 18 says, The people of Joseph said to Joshua, Why have you given us only one allotment and one portion for an inheritance? We are a numerous people, and the Lord has blessed us abundantly. If you are so numerous, Joshua answered, and if the hill country of Ephraim is too small for you, go up into the forest and clear land for yourself there in the land of the Perizzites and Raphites. The people of Joseph replied, The whole country is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites who live in the plain have chariots fitted with iron, with these in Bethshan and its settlements, and those in the valley of Jezreel. But Joshua said to the tribes of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, You are numerous and very powerful. You will have not only one allotment, but the forest hill country as well. Clear it, and its farthest limits will be yours. Though the Canaanites have chariots fitted with iron, and though they are strong, you can drive them out. So, notice the 2 contrasting attitudes towards settling the promised land. Caleb took what God gave him and moved ahead to fulfill God's plan for him. He was confident that God would help him drive out the wicked inhabitants and that he would soon fully occupy his land. In contrast, the 2 tribes of Joseph were given rich land and lots of it, but they were afraid to drive out the inhabitants and take full possession of it. Instead, they begged for more land, but Joshua asked them to prove their sincerity first by clearing the unclaimed forest areas. The tribes agreed, but then failed to do so, which we'll read in the next video. Verse 1 through 2 says, The whole assembly of the Israelites gathered at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there. The country was brought under their control, but there were still 7 Israelite tribes who had not yet received their inheritance. So, with most of the conquest behind them, the Israelites moved their religious center from Gilgal to Shiloh. This was probably the first permanent location for the tabernacle. Its central location in the land made it easier for the people to attend the special worship services and yearly festivals. Later, the family of Samuel, a great priest and prophet, would travel annually to Shiloh, and on one trip, when Samuel was a small boy, he would be left there to stay with Eli the priest. The tabernacle would remain in Shiloh through the period of the Judges, which is about 300 years. Apparently, the city was destroyed by the Philistines when the Ark of the Covenant was captured, which is in 1 Samuel. And Shiloh never lived up to its reputation as Israel's religious center, for later references in the Bible point to the wickedness and idolatry in the city. You'll find that in Psalm and Jeremiah. But as we go on in chapter 8, we see that 7 of the tribes had not yet been assigned their land. They gathered at Shiloh, where Joshua cast lots to determine which areas would be given to them. Using this sacred lottery, the choice would be made by God, not Joshua or any other human leader. By this time, the Canaanites had, in most places, become so weakened that they were no longer a threat. However, instead of fulfilling God's command to destroy the remaining Canaanites, these 7 tribes would often take the path of least resistance. As nomadic people, they may have been reluctant to settle down, preferring to depend economically on the people they were supposed to eliminate. Others may have feared the high cost of continued warfare. Trading for goods was easier and more profitable than destroying the suppliers and having to provide for themselves. The hesitancy of the remaining 7 tribes is a good metaphor for how we can sometimes treat our own lives. Instead of seizing the moment, we can be lazy or afraid, so we wait around and question what God really wants for us. Usually the good things God has promised us already, like a deep relationship with Him and freedom for what weighs us down, are there for the taking, and we simply need to step out in faith to take possession. You got that? 3 through 6, verses 3 through 6 of chapter 18. So Joshua said to the Israelites, "How long will you wait before you begin to take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you? Appoint 3 men from each tribe. I will send them out to make a survey of the land and write a description of it according to the inhabitants of each. Then they will return to me. You are to divide the land into 7 parts. Judah is to remain in its territory on the south, and the tribes of Joseph in their territory on the north. After you have written descriptions of the 7 parts of the land, bring them here to me, and I will cast lots for you in the presence of the Lord our God." Joshua asked why some of the tribes were putting off the job of possessing the land. Often, we delay doing work that seems overwhelming, difficult, boring, or disagreeable. Work we don't enjoy can require concentration, teamwork, time, encouragement, and accountability. But to continue putting it off shows a lack of discipline, poor stewardship of time, and in some cases, disobedience to God. We need to remember this when you are tempted to procrastinate or give up. As the men started on their way to map out the land, Joshua instructed them, "Go and make a survey of the land and write a description of it. Then return to me, and I will cast lots for you here at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord." Making decisions by casting lots was a common practice among the Hebrews. Little was known about the actual method used in Joshua's day. A type of dice may have been used. Another possibility is that 2 urns were used, one containing tribal names and the other divisions of the land. Drawing one name from each urn matched the tribe to a region. The Urim and Thummim may also have been used. No matter how it was done, the process removed human choice from the decision-making and allowed God to match tribes and lands as He saw fit. The tribe of Benjamin was given a narrow strip of land that served as a buffer zone between Judah and Ephraim, the 2 tribes that would later dominate the land. Verse 16 says, "The boundary went down to the foothill of the of the hill facing the valley of Beth Hinnom, north of the valley of Ephraim, continued down from the Hinnom Valley along the southern slope of the Jebusite city, and so to En-Rogel. The valley of Ben Hinnom became associated with the worship of the Ammonite god Molech in Jeremiah's time. The terrible worship rites involved sacrificing children. Later, the valley was used for burning garbage and the corpses of criminals and animals, thus its name became a synonym for hell. Chapter 19, verse 18 says, the territory included Jezreel, Kesuloth, Shunem. Shunem was one of the towns given to the tribe of Issachar. When King David was elderly and frail, a young woman from Shunem was brought to the king to take care of him. Later, Elisha stayed at the house of a wealthy woman and her husband who lived in Shunem. The couple's only son died, and Elisha raised him from the dead. Wait. That was Elisha, right? Elisha or Elijah? I know Elijah did raise someone from the dead. Did Elisha did too? I can't remember. I need to go double check. I know where this is talking about too, so. Excuse me. or 2 Kings? Oh yeah, it is. Okay, yeah. Verse 22 says, the boundary touched Tabor, Shahazuma, and Beth Shamish, and ended at the Jordan. There were 16 towns and their villages. So, Tabor is most likely Mount Tabor, a single-round mountain that rises almost 1,900 feet from its base. Tabor served as an indisputable landmark at the border of 3 tribes, Zebulun, Naphtali, and Issachar. At this mountain, Deborah told Barak to call out 10,000 of his warriors. The tribe of Naphtali was descended from Jacob's 6th son, who had been born to Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant. Nazareth and Capernaum were located within the historic borders of Naphtali. In the time of Jesus, this region was despised by the religious leaders in Jerusalem. But this is where Jesus would grow up and where he would spend the most time during his 3 years of active ministry. The prophet Isaiah predicted that the land of Naphtali would be humbled but would later be fulfilled with glory. The tribe of Dan found that some of their land was difficult to conquer, so they chose to migrate to Lashem, where they knew victory would be easier. They did not carry out God's will. Anyone can trust God when it's going easy. But our faith and courage are to be put to the test when everything looks impossible. We need to have faith that God is great enough to tackle your most difficult situations, especially when God is the one who placed you there. Verse 51 says, these are the territories that Eleazar the priest, Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the tribal clans of Israel assigned by Lot at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting, and so they finished dividing the land. There were several reasons for establishing these well-set boundaries instead of turning the promised land into a single undivided nation. The boundaries gave each tribe ownership of an area, promoting loyalty and unity that would strengthen each tribe. The boundaries delineated areas of responsibility and privilege, which would help each tribe develop and mature. The boundaries reduced conflicts that might have broken out if everyone had wanted to live in the choicest areas, and the boundaries fulfilled the promised inheritance for each tribe, many declared in the blessings given many years earlier by Jacob. A new nation in a new land needed a new government. Many years earlier, God had told Moses how this government should function. One thing God wanted the Israelites to do when they entered the Promised Land was to designate certain cities as cities of refuge. This is in chapter 20, by the way. These were to be set aside throughout the land. Their purpose was to prevent injustice, especially in cases of revenge. For example, those who accidentally killed someone else could flee to a city of refuge to be safe until they could have a fair trial. The Levites were in charge of these cities. They were to ensure that God's principles of justice and fairness were kept. Verse 2 of chapter 21 says, at Shiloh in Canaan, and said to them, the Lord commanded through Moses that you give us towns to live in with pasture lands for our livestock. The Levites were to serve on behalf of all the people, so they were given cities scattered throughout the land. Their role was changing. Earlier, they had helped the priest with the sacrifices and set up the tabernacle when it moved. Later, during the New Testament period, some would be the teachers of the Jewish law. Although Jerusalem was far away from the homes of many Israelites, almost no one lived more than a day's journey from a Levitical city, so they had no excuse for losing contact with their spiritual leaders. Verses 43 through 45 says, so the Lord gave Israel all the land he had sworn to give their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there. The Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their ancestors. Not one of their enemies withstood them. The Lord gave all their enemies into their hands. Not one of all the Lord's good promises to Israel failed. Every one was fulfilled. God proved faithful in fulfilling every promise he had given to Israel. Fulfillment of some promises took several years, but every one was fulfilled. God's promises will be fulfilled according to his timetable, not ours, but we will know that his word is sure. The more we learn of those promises God has fulfilled and continues to fulfill, the easier it is to hope for those yet to come. Sometimes we become impatient, wanting God to act in a certain way now. Instead, we should faithfully do what we know he wants us to do and trust him for the future. Verses 2 through 4 of chapter 22 says, and said to them, you have done all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded, and you have obeyed me in everything I commanded. For a long time now, to this very day, you have not deserted your fellow Israelites, but have carried them out the mission the Lord your God gave you. Now that the Lord your God has given them rest as he promised, return to your homes in the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Before the conquest had begun, these tribes were given land on the east side of the Jordan River. But before they could settle down, they had at first promised to help the other tribes conquer the land on the west side. They had patiently and diligently done what they had promised, and Joshua commended them for doing it. At last they were permitted to return to their families and build their cities. Follow through is vital in God's work. Don't give in to the temptation to quit early and leave undone what God has asked you to complete. Verse 5 says, but be very careful to keep the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to keep his commands, to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. So, here Joshua briefly restated the central message Moses gave the people in Deuteronomy. Obedience should be based on love for God. Although the Israelites had completed their military responsibility, Joshua reminded them of their spiritual responsibility. Sometimes we think so much about what we are to do that we neglect thinking about who we are to be. If we know we are God's children, we will love him and joyfully serve him. We must not let daily service take away from our love for God. When the tribes of Reuben and Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an altar by the Jordan River, the rest of Israel feared that these tribes were sought in their own religion and rebelling against God. But I'll be back. But many of the rest of Israel feared that the tribes were starting their own religion and they were rebelling against God. But before beginning an all-out war, Phineas led a delegation to learn the truth, following the principle taught in Deuteronomy, chapter 13, verse 12 through 18. Go back and read it. He was prepared to negotiate rather than fight if a battle was not necessary. When he learned that the altar was for a memorial rather than for pagan sacrifice, war was averted and unity restored. We would all benefit from a similar approach to resolving conflicts, assuming the worst about the intentions of others only brings trouble. Assuming the worst about the intentions... we would all benefit from a similar approach to resolving conflicts, assuming the worst about the intentions of others only brings trouble. Israel averted the threat of civil war by asking before assaulting. Remember to listen to someone's whole story before reacting. The tribes were concerned that without some visible sign of unity between the people on the two sides of the Jordan, their descendants might be more prone to conflict with one another. The altar pattern after the altar of the Lord was to remind these people that they all worship the same God. Often we need to be reminded of the faith of our ancestors so that we do not repeat their mistakes or experience unnecessary division. How can believers today model faithful traditions for the next generation of believers? We should take time to invest in those who are younger than us so that they will know how to live faithfully. Verse 4 through 5 of chapter 23 says, remember how I have allotted as inheritance for your tribes of the land of the nations and that remain, the nations I conquered between the Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea and the rest. The Lord your God himself will push them out for your sake. He will drive them out before you, and you will take possession of their land as the Lord has commanded, as the Lord your God promised you. Some of the land that Joshua had assigned to the various tribes remained unconquered. Israel's gradual occupation of the land had an ecological reason, a military reason, and a theological reason. Israel's ensuing unfaithfulness delayed the settlement process by several centuries. Instead of driving out the remaining Canaanites, Israel absorbed them, bringing God's people even greater temptations to unfaithfulness. Joshua knew this to be a real danger. We need to root out sinful influences in our lives rather than allow them to lead us into sinful practices. So Joshua knew the nation's weak spots. Before dying, he called the people together and gave commands to help them where they were most likely to slip. And these were the commands. Follow all that is written in the book of the law of Moses without turning aside. Don't associate with the people remaining in the land or worship their gods. Don't intermarry with them. Don't intermarry with them. These temptations were right in their backyard. Our associations and relationships can be temptations to us as well. It's wise to identify our weak spots before we break them down. Then we can develop strategies to overcome these temptations instead of being overcome by them. Verse 8 says, if I can find it, but you are to hold fast to the Lord your God as you have until now. Joshua was dying, so he called all the leaders of the nations together to give them his final words of encouragement and instruction. His whole message can be summarized in this verse, hold fast to the Lord your God. Joshua had been a living example of those words, and he wanted that to be his legacy. For what do you want to be remembered, and what do you want to pass on to those you will leave behind? You can leave them nothing better than the encouragement to hold on to God and the example of a person who did. Verses 12 through 16, it says, but if you turn away and ally yourself with the survivors of these nations that remain among you, and if you intermarry with them and associate with them, then you may be sure that the Lord your God will no longer drive out these nations before you. Instead, they will become snares and traps for you, with whips on your back and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from this good land which the Lord your God has given you. Now I'm about to go the way of all the earth. You know with all your heart and soul that not one of all the good promises the Lord your God gave you has failed. Every promise has been fulfilled. Not one has failed. But just as all the good things the Lord your God has promised you have come to you, so he will bring on you all the evil things he has threatened, until the Lord your God has destroyed you from this good land he has given you. If you violate the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you, and go and serve other gods and bow down to them, the Lord's anger will burn against you, and you will quickly perish from the good land he has given you. This chilling prediction about the consequences of intermarriage with the Canaanite nations eventually became a reality. Numerous stories in the book of Judges show what the Israelites had to suffer because of their failure to follow God wholeheartedly. God was supremely loving and patient with his people, just as he is with us today, but we must not confuse his patience with us as a approval or indifference to our sin. We need to be careful about demanding your own way because it might have unintended painful consequences. Verse 15 of chapter 24 says, but if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. The people had to decide whether they would obey the Lord, who had proven his trustworthiness, or follow the local gods, which were only handmade idols. Eventually, we see that they would not be intentional about obeying God and would foolishly drift toward the customs of their pagan neighbors. We can easily slip into a quiet rebellion, going about life in our own way, but the time will come when we have to choose who or what we will follow. The choice belongs to each of us. Would be the one true God or an imperfect or sinful substitute. Seek each day to be guided by the Holy Spirit. Invite him daily to rule your heart, mind, and desires. Then it will be much more difficult to drift away from him. In taking a definite stand for the Lord, Joshua again displayed his spiritual leadership. Because Joshua had made a commitment to God, he was determined to set an example of living by that decision, regardless of what others decided. The way we live shows others the strength of our commitment to serving God. All the people boldly claimed that they would never forsake the Lord, in verses 16 to 21. The nation followed God throughout Joshua's lifetime, a great tribute to Joshua's faith in God and powerful leadership. But they did not keep that promise. Even though Joshua warned them of the consequences, very soon God will charge them with breaking their covenant with him. Talk is cheap. We can say we will follow God, but living like we mean it is much more important. Look back to the promises you made to God earlier in your life. Are you keeping them with fresh enthusiasm you had then, review the commitments you have made to God and renew your promise to them, to keep them. Verse 23 says, Now then said Joshua, throw away the foreign gods that are among you, and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. Joshua told the Israelites to destroy their foreign gods, their idols. To follow God requires destroying whatever gets in the way of worshiping Him. We have our own idols, greed, disordered priorities, jealousy, prejudice that set in the way of worshiping God. God is not satisfied if we merely hide these idols. We must completely remove them from our lives. Verse 24 through 26 says, And the people said to Joshua, We will serve the Lord our God and obey Him. On that day Joshua made a covenant for the people, and there at Shechem he reaffirmed for them decrees and laws. And Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of God. And he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak near the holy place of the Lord. The covenant between Israel and God was that the people would worship and obey the Lord alone. Their purpose was to become a holy nation that would influence the rest of the world for God. The conquest of Canaan was a means to achieve this purpose. But after this generation, a new generation would stop following the Lord, forgetting all the great things He did for the ancestors and worshiping false gods. The same can happen in our own lives. The people of Joshua's generation promised to serve the Lord alone, but the very next generation forgot this and went back on the promise their parents had made. We must be vigilant, both in rooting our own idols and sinful practices and in teaching others who come after us to follow God faithfully. Verses 29 through 31 says, After these things, Joshua son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110, and they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath-Serah in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had experienced everything the Lord had done for Israel. The book of Joshua opens with a new leader being handed a seemingly impossible task: to lead the nation in taking over the land of Canaan. By following God closely, Joshua led the people through military victories and faithful spiritual obedience. In chapter 24, verse 16, we read that the people were sure that they would never forsake the Lord. The response of the whole nation during these many years is a tribute both to Joshua's leadership and to the God he faithfully served. Verse 33 says, And Eleazar, son of Aaron, died and was buried at Gibeah, which had been allotted to his son Phinehas in the hill country of Ephraim. Joshua and Eleazar died, but not before laying before the people the fundamentals of what it means to live faithfully before God. We are to fear and serve the Lord alone. This is based on a choice to obey Him instead of following other gods. We are incapable, however, of properly worshiping Him because of our rebellion and sins. By choosing God as Lord, we enter into a covenant with Him whereby He promises not only to forgive and love us, but also to enable us by His Spirit to do His work here on earth. This covenant requires us to renounce the principles and practices of the culture around us that are hostile to God's plan. This is not to be done alone, but by binding ourselves together with others who have faith in God. That is it for Joshua. My throat is sore if you can't tell today, but we got done. So I will probably be doing Judges tomorrow, debating on it. If I want to start it Friday or Sunday. So let's say the prayer. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Lord, I thank you for gathering us here today. I ask that you give us wisdom. I ask that you give us understanding. I ask that you give us all we need, Lord, all the knowledge we need to follow you, Lord. And you already have. You gave us this book. I ask that you can conquer all the evils in our life, that you can conquer all the sin in our life, that you can stab the flesh of evil and rid it and replace it with a spirit of goodness, a spirit of joyfulness, and a spirit of love, Lord. I ask that if anyone doesn't have you, that they can find you, Lord, and that if they already do have you, that they can continue to pursue you, Lord, and that because of pursuing you and because they are joyful and faithful in you and they are loving in you, Lord, they can also go out and spread your will and word, Lord. I ask that people can learn from these videos. I ask that I can also learn from reading for these people and reading these videos as well, Lord. I thank you for choosing me to do all this, Lord. It is the greatest honor to serve you, and it's just wonderful. Even with a sore throat, it's wonderful. But you provide in the most suffering of times, Lord, and you always answer in the most suffering of times, Lord. I thank you for all this. I pray for all this, and in your name I pray. Amen. I will see y'all Friday or Sunday. So Good night.